The warning, you shouldn't smoke crack. But again, a lot of us alcoholics, addicts, we think we're going to be different. I'm not going to let it get a hold of me like that. I'm so much smarter and I'm, better than these other people. When my friend Alan seemed to have it under control, okay, if he can do it, I can do it. And in the summer of 1989, I was arrested 7 times, committing some burglary or robbery to get more money for cocaine. I've been sober almost 34 years. I joke, I'm more sober than CA in London because I'm almost 34 and CA in London is almost 33.
Hello and welcome to 12 Steps and 12 Questions. My name is Silvio and I'm an addict. This pod is full of personal and inspirational stories of recovery from addiction. And in every episode, I'll ask each guest the same 12 questions about their life, addiction and recovery. Quick warning, there will be some graphic descriptions and a healthy amount of swearing. For this episode, please welcome Sean. Hi, spiritual seekers. Welcome to this episode of 12 Steps and 12 Questions. I'm always keen on hearing from any and all 12 steppers, no matter which fellowship, to be one of my guests here on this pod. So if this is you or someone you know, just send me an email on 12steps12questions@gmail.com. The email is also in the show notes. And with that, let's get to my guest for today. I'm so pleased that he's here. Sean, please introduce yourself.
Hello, Silvio. Thanks for having me. My name is Sean Dugan. I believe I'm a cocaine addict. I still have alcoholism. I've been sober almost 34 years. My primary fellowship is Cocaine Anonymous, but I do AA probably equally. I live in New York City now, but I got sober in Los Angeles. And when I first got sober, I probably did 5 to 6 CA meetings a week and maybe 1 or 2 AA meetings. And just, like living in New York, since COVID, there are only 4 in-person CA meetings a week.
Oh, wow.
So I do more AA. But when I travel, and when I saw you in London last week, I get to do a CA meeting every day. And CA is my home fellowship because deep in my addiction, I smoke crack. That's what brought me to my knees. So I had to be around other cocaine addicts to find recovery.
Right. Wonderful. Thank you, Sean. Coming up to 34 years. Wow. Amazing. Let's get to it. So the first of...
One day at a time.
Indeed so. The first of the 12 questions is, Sean, did you have any adverse childhood experiences?
I was raised in a loving, supportive home. It's funny. I was at a play a couple of weeks ago, and it was a play about a mother and a son, and the father/husband had died within the past 2 years or so. He was a drug addict, went to rehab numerous times. The mother was a classic Al-Anon, tried to have tough boundaries. When the kid cleaned up a little bit, she would start, forgetting he was an addict. After the show, I was outside and I was waiting for one of the actresses, the woman who played the mom, because she's a personal friend of mine. So I was just waiting to talk to her, and she was in recovery also. And I overheard a gentleman talking to his wife and another couple, and I could tell he didn't understand about us.
Yeah.
He said, I wanted to see what led to his addiction. Why did you feel like he needed to do drugs? And I'm not an anonymous person. And I took the chance to talk about, recovery. And I asked the guy, do you know anybody who's in addiction or, suffers from alcoholism or addiction? That because we don't know. There's the classic story of, the child who was, both parents were alcoholics. One parent was an alcoholic. He grew up in, broken home, going to different houses and, being shuffled between parents and this and that, or some trauma happened. And that's why he's an addict, or the kid who, comes from extremely wealthy parents, and the parents, they're so busy living their life and making a living, they forget and kind of, abandon the child emotionally. And that child finds other drug addicts or other kids to hang out with. I got to go to summer camp. I went to nice schools. Both my parents were home. Both my parents worked, but, we ate dinner at home. My grandmother helped raise me. I was an altar boy. So nothing really traumatic led me to getting, trying drugs or alcohol. I didn't smoke my first joint until after I got out of high school, and it was just because I was fitting in. I wanted to feel like I fit in. And, you know, weed smoking progressed from once in a while to more frequently to every day. And, in college, I, drank at parties or social functions. So it was like alcohol and weed, and then, progress from there. But as a child, no, nothing traumatic that led me to drug addiction.
I say this quite often on this pod, is that I like this question not because we are necessarily trying to find reasons as to why we're addicts. We're just addicts. And, I've often said step one is very clear. It doesn't say we became alcoholics because our mothers treated us badly. It's just an admission of powerlessness, But I like, because it's a personal podcast, I like to get to know my guests a little bit better, and for everybody else to get to know them a little bit better. So I think you're an Angelino by birth, are you not?
Correct. Grew up in Los Angeles. My dad was he was born in Georgia, the small town of Georgia. So I spent time in the South. My mom was born in Los Angeles. And one of the things that set me apart, and things that you don't realize until you get sober and until you start doing some inventory, I did feel, like I said, nothing traumatic happened, but I didn't feel, my dad was 40 when I was born. My dad was 47, almost 47 when I was born. My mom was almost 40 when I was born. Mm-hmm. And that was quite late. I was her first child. I have a half sister who's 17 years older than me. So just not feel, my sister was 17 years older. My dad was older. My mom was older. Again, that just set me apart from other people. Mm-hmm. But, growing up in Los Angeles at a time which was much simpler, things are, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have cell phones. We, the answer machine was whoever answered the phone.
Yeah.
When you left the house, nobody could track you down. It was all until somebody picked up. So things were a lot easier back then, in my opinion. Just kids, we played outside.
Yeah.
We didn't have screen time. We went out and played and got dirty and fell down and got up. So it was, a pretty basic American upbringing.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Did you enjoy your school? I mean, what was your schooling experience? Mine was terrible. That's why I ask.
I did enjoy school. My folks were not wealthy, but since they both worked, my dad owned the dry cleaners. So I guess it was kind of blue collar work. And my mother worked for the county of Los Angeles. She, was in administration. But because they both worked, we got, I got nice clothes. I never wanted for anything. And I went to a private nursery school, kindergarten and nursery school. And these were, and I know some of the kids still now, but these were the kids of doctors and lawyers and other working parents.
Yeah.
And then after, so I went there, nursery school and first grade. And then I went to a military school, and it was the kind of military school where you went home every day. But so we'd have to stay overnight, but we wore uniforms, and it was discipline, and it was, teaching us good values. Mm-hmm. And I left there. So I was there from second grade to seventh grade. And then I went to a co-ed private school, again, very small. And I could survive because I was well-mannered, I was polite. And looking back, I didn't have to do as much work as other kids because I was the nice black kid. I think there were maybe throughout school, maybe in a class, there maybe were 4 blacks. My graduating class was very small. I think we had 43 people. You knew pretty much everyone. Like my graduating class was only 43 people. So, some schools in Los Angeles, it's hundreds. So there might be somebody that you don't know, but I knew everybody. We were all in the same classes. Yeah. So again, I could survive and just, be a good kid and get by.
Yeah, being I'm quoting you here, the nice black kid. and being, what, 4 blacks out of 43, right? So I grew up the son of Italian parents in 1970s and 80s Germany. So in other words, everybody was taller, looked different. You know, they were bigger, taller, better, more German, blonder, everything you could possibly imagine. And I felt less than because of that, and quite different because of that. Did you have a similar experience, or did it actually just not really bother you all that much?
I was aware of the difference in race at a very young age. Again, growing up and watching TV, you didn't see people that looked like me on TV. And I remember wanting to be white. I remember one day, like, if I brush my hair enough, maybe it'll turn straight, because that's just who I was running with. Those were my friends, and called me any names or treated me different, but I just was aware that there was a difference, in the races. There was a TV show when I was young, was called Julia, and she was Diane Carroll was the actress, and she was like one of the first, I think she was a nurse, but so she had a good career, and she was a single mom. So Diane Carroll was the mom, and her son, the actor's name was Mark Copage, and these were like black people on TV. And then in later years, Good Times and the Jeffersons, so you started seeing more and more and more. But I definitely felt a difference. I knew I was different than other kids.
Yeah.
Again, that nobody ever treated me badly, but I knew I was different.
Okay. Now, question 2 is, what did the moment you first got hooked, or the fun times, what did that look like? So you're in LA, and you've got, by the sounds of it, quite a good childhood. You get on with your parents. There's no capital T trauma going on. And at some point or another, you came across alcohol, dope. You mentioned dope first, I think, smoking weed. I think many people will have tried their hand at different substances and so on, but clearly something must have stuck with you at some point. Talk to us a little bit about that.
It was, again, drinking was something we did, on the weekends in college, but smoking weed, and I've heard it shared in meetings. Remember when drugs were, fun, or the evening's enhancer.
Yeah.
Drugs were the evening's enhancer, then it became the evening, or it was drugs were fun, then there were problems, then it was just problems. So smoking weed, your inhibitions went down. It just seemed like it would add something to whatever you were doing. If you're at a sporting event, you were at a party, at a concert, it just seemed to add something more to it. And again, weed is legal in most of the, country now, as alcohol is.
Sure.
And it's, again, I never ran into the issues that I did, smoking weed, that I did once I started doing cocaine. Again, there were no consequences.
Mm-hmm. And so when you started, you weren't a blackout drinker right away by the sound of it. It didn't seem to be problematic from the off.
No. I never drank. And again, this is something I've learned since I've been sober. I identify, if I'm at an AA meeting and they want you to identify as an alcoholic, I will identify because I believe the disease of alcoholism, aka addiction, is the same. But I never drank alcoholically. I never had a blackout. I think I threw up from drinking 3 times. And again, that I remember. And it was, it was preceded by food. I ate some spaghetti or whatever. I had a hangover one day. So alcohol was I never got, oh my gosh, I'm not going to drink anymore. It was like, don't drink after eating spaghetti or that much. So alcohol was never a problem. Now, if I had kept drinking, it might have become a problem. But it never led to, to any trouble. So I never had a blackout. Never had a blackout, had one hangover, and didn't really throw up from alcohol.
It doesn't sound as if you had that classic experience that we often speak at this point that we often speak about here, which is that moment of almost spiritual moment of going, oh my God, this thing completes me, finding that sort of Lego brick that just fits perfectly to whatever is going on inside of you. So you were, to all intents and purposes, a social drinker and a social smoker, and things were fine.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. How long did that go on for, and then how did that progress?
Alcohol, again, from the time I had my first, and again, I drank, the first time I had anything that I enjoyed drinking was, church wine, having communion in 8 or 9 years old. And going forward at family functions, I would sit at the adult table and I'd have wine with dinner, as people in Europe do. A lot of, kids have wine. So again, alcohol never became a problem. When it got towards the end, where the cocaine addiction was really bad, and I'd be with people and they'd say, oh, we need to save some money so we can have some alcohol to come down. I was like, no, we need to pool our money to get more cocaine. So from the time I had my first drink, to where I was a regular drinker in college, or, a social drinker, in my professional career, alcohol never was a problem. Weed, again, I started smoking more than I really had planned to. I started smoking more. Weed, I smoked all day. If I had it, I'd smoke in the morning, smoke it throughout the day, smoke it at night. But when I got to cocaine, that's when the problem started. So as a drinker, yes, I was a social drinker.
Talk a little bit to us about cocaine and when you first took it and what it did for you and what the fun times with cocaine, quote unquote, very much looked like. Because obviously we met in the rooms of Cocaine Anonymous, and you just in your introduction were speaking so fondly of your of your relationship with CA. So let's talk about cocaine, if this is the main issue.
So the first time I did cocaine, and it was just probably 1982, I was at a party, and I think it was a party at my apartment, and a friend just gave me a line, and I took it, and it didn't really do anything for me. I was like, oh, whatever. I wasn't, oh my gosh, I'm never going to do that again. And it wasn't, oh, I like, just nothing, But about 2 years later, the summer of 1984, a friend of mine that I worked with, he had borrowed some money from me, and he said, oh, I know I owe you $25. I can pay you the $25, or I can, give you some Coke. So a friend of mine is selling Coke now. What do you want? And again, cocaine was more popular. You heard about it more. So I said, oh, let me try the Coke. And I liked it. It just, I think that was the weekend of the Olympics, of the 1984 Olympics in LA.
Okay.
So again, it was a time I was out of college. The Olympics are going on. I'm going to the Olympic events. I'm working in the TV sports industry. And again, the same feelings of smoking weed, cocaine was now adding more to it. It's adding more to the good time. So again, I'd do it on the weekends or do it occasionally, no problems. But whenever you had cocaine, it was always a better time. You did it with Coke, and you're cool, and oh, you're doing Coke, and girls like it, and it was just cool. And then it progressed to, getting more on credit, and not being able to have it because I had to pay the dealer back. There was a TV program about a year ago, and it was about the history of the Los Angeles Lakers, a basketball team. And they were interviewing different players or different people who worked at the Forum when the Lakers played. And they said there was a dealer at the Forum, that's where the Lakers had played in the 70s and 80s, and he was in the press club. And I said, oh my gosh, that was my dealer. So I had the same dealer as these other people. But again, he never let me, I never owed him thousands of dollars. I might owe him, $100, and he wouldn't sell me anymore until I paid him. And so it never got to, when I was snorting cocaine, it never got to, am I going to pay the rent, or am I going to buy cocaine? Am I going to buy cocaine? So again, it was something, there was starting to be some problems, but nothing seriously. When I started smoking crack, that's when everything changed.
We'll get to that in a second. This concept that you were just talking about a moment ago of cocaine or weed being the enhancer of the evening, the enhancer of the experience. This was something I experienced also really keenly. All right, well, we're going to go watch a movie. All right, I need to smoke a joint, or I have to have a bong before I do that, because, otherwise the movie might not be quite as funny, or, a really, and it's interesting, it never occurred to me that it might just be a crap movie, right? I might just not be enjoying the movie, but,
Right.
if you,
Right.
if you need drugs to enjoy it, maybe the movie's just not that good, And then, of course, with
Right.
going out in particular, much as, it's been said, of course, about alcohol, for instance, being the social lubricant, and my social experiences were enhanced by, being looser, being cooler, being more relaxed, and
Right.
all of that. So a
Right.
lot's being said about that, but the enhancer thing is something I haven't thought about for a little while. Because it was very, very important to me that I knew I was going to go somewhere. What can I use in order to enhance this experience? And when, as you said also, at some point, of course, what happens is that you really do away with the actual event. It's just about the
Right.
using, right? But we'll get to that in a moment. It doesn't sound as if you're using at this point, even though it might have progressed a little and you've discovered cocaine was super problematic, as if you had crossed the invisible line. Now, question 3 is, what were your worst consequences, and finally your rock bottom? Now, I'm sure that there's quite a long period of time here that we're covering with this question, but you said everything changed when you smoked crack for the first time.
Correct. So I smoked crack for the first time. And again, so going, before that, and again, I can look back and realize that if I had been smoking weed, if I had paid more attention to schoolwork or work, things I was doing, I probably would have progressed faster. I would have, been farther along. But, I was in 1985, my folks helped me buy a condominium. So I was a homeowner. And again, I paid my mortgage on time. I paid my bills on time. But that was the first time I tried to stop snorting cocaine. I said, I'm a homeowner. And instead of spending, $100 a week on cocaine, I should put that towards my house, whether it be paying the mortgage down or light bills or whatever. But again, I couldn't stop. I said, I'm going to stop on Saturday, and then Saturday became next Wednesday, and the next Wednesday became a week from now. And then, so I just said, there's no reason to stop. You're in your 20s, you're on your own home, you work in the TV industry. It's cool. No reason to stop.
Life is good.
But once I started smoking it, within a very short period of time, I started going to work late. And I didn't have to work till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, typically. If we were doing a nighttime game, we didn't have to be work till 2. So when you can't get to work at 2 in the afternoon, there's a problem, but more and more, I'm not paying this bill because I'm, smoking coke. I'm not, paying this, I'm not preparing for work because I'm spending more and more time on cocaine. And I stopped showing up for work. And again, I was in the TV industry, so I was a graphics coordinator. So anything you see on the screen at a sporting event, I was responsible for. So imagine if I'm showing up and I'm misspelling people's names, and I'm just, not putting in the time beforehand to prepare for this event. Because a live event, you can't change it.
No.
If I spell your name SELV, I can change it, but everybody knows he misspelled it,
So there's some pressure attached to that.
Right. So that's when the consequence started, and I was relieved of my duties but one producer wouldn't work with me anymore because of, what was happening with me with my cocaine addiction.
Let's go one step back very quickly. What made you try crack in the first place, and did it not already have a pretty bad reputation then? I mean, I know it's the mid-'80s, so maybe the crack epidemic wasn't at its height, but nonetheless, you must have maybe had an inkling that this might not be the greatest of ideas.
It definitely had. There's a line in the Big Book when Bill talks about the headstone, and he goes, "Ominous warning that I failed to heed."
Yeah.
I knew about people getting addicted to cocaine, but and the first person that offered it to me of smoking it was my cousin. And I saw him, he lived in Hawaii, but he was visiting me in Los Angeles, and I saw him smoking every day. And one day I just saw him, what's it like? And he offered me a hit, and he was holding, I had the pipe in my hand. He was holding the torch, and his hand was shaking as he was holding the torch. And I just like, "Oh, I'm okay. And about a week later, another friend of mine who I knew smoked cocaine was over, and he offered me a hit, and he seemed to be more in control. And I said, okay, I'll try it. And so that was it. And from the first hit I took, I liked it. Again, I didn't know what it was gonna lead to, but I did enjoy it. And then we smoked that afternoon. I don't know, whatever. We spent between the three of us, we spent, a couple $100 or whatever. But again, I was making good money, and again, I was work. And over the next week or so, I just did it more frequently and found out some other people who did it. And then that the warning that you shouldn't smoke crack. But again, a lot of us alcoholics, addicts, we think we're going to be different. I'm not going to let it get a hold of me like that because I'm so much smarter and I'm, better than these other people.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, when my friend Alan seemed to have it under control, okay, if he can do it, I can do it.
Slightly off script, Sean. You don't have to answer this. It's absolutely fine, but slightly off script. Alan and your cousin, where are they now?
My cousin, funny story, he could have really done well. He was from Hawaii. He went to a private school in Hawaii, a very old private school, and he was Barack Obama's best friend in high school. And Barack wrote about him in his first book, Dreams of My Father. He changed his name because he hadn't heard from him in a while. So he couldn't without the disclosure. But Keith was my cousin's name. He popped up and got some national attention. He was homeless at the time. He'd been in prison. And by this time I was I think I was 8 years sober, maybe. No. I was 7 or 8 years sober, whatever it was. No, 10. I was over 10 years sober. So I had, gotten sober, and I was at my mom's house, and she showed me this newspaper, and his name was there, and he was half Japanese, so he had a Japanese last name, and I was like, wow, somebody with the same name as Keith. She goes, no, that is Keith. So I read it, and again, he was Obama. So this was Obama's the only other black kid that went to this high school. And I was like, oh my gosh, let me try to find him. And I reached out, found him on Facebook. And I said, this guy might be president. And you were his best friend. He looked up to you, He didn't want anything to do with it. He was stuck in everything, it's the man's fault. The man did this to me. And on the other hand, he started going to Cocaine Anonymous. We would still be back and forth. He'd have a couple weeks sober, and then he'd use. I went to jail in February of 1991. That's when I finally got sober. And Alan was one of the people who came to visit me. So Alan was sober at the time. He did pick up time. So he would have had, before I think was 2 years less time than me. And Alan really just died about a month ago. So we remained friends, in sobriety, and he was my Eskimo. I ended up renting a room from him, and he continued to work in the TV industry. He was a cameraman. And so I've known him for 40 years. We worked, we smoked weed together, we drank together, we smoked coke together, we got sober together. And he just went in for a kind of a typical procedure. And, he smoked for a long time. He smoked cigarettes for a long time. He was married with a young child. and it was tragic. But he passed, about 2 months ago. But he died sober. He died over 30 years sober.
Sorry to hear about your loss. What is interesting though is to hear that both of those people that were there early on with you when you were first using crack for the first time and cocaine at the time, that they both, I think it's fair to say, ended up struggling with the substance. So I think that's really interesting. So
Yeah.
how did it progress from there? You just alluded to the fact that you ended up going to prison doing time and that is where you got sober. So if you could talk to us maybe about the progression towards that and your rock bottom before you came into the rooms. If you're enjoying this podcast and would like other addicts and alcoholics to hear it, then please make the pesky AIs and algorithms work their 12th step. Hit like and subscribe.
So once I lost my job in the TV industry, again, I still was a practicing drug addict. So I still needed drugs. So I turned to crime. And burglaries, just stealing from my parents whenever possible. Lost a condo they bought for me. I moved back home with them, and I'm going through their pockets or their my mom's purse, stealing jewelry, and then running with the wrong crowd and being a commercial burglar. And in the summer of 1989, I was arrested 7 times. And I went to jail 7 different times. All, maybe just 2 or 3 nights. I think the longest I stayed was a month. But again, just trying to get cocaine, either having it and being stopped by the police or committing some burglary or robbery to get more money for cocaine. So again, the mind of the addict. One more, I'll stop. After one more good score, after we get enough, it'll be one more. And that's the great obsession of every alcoholic addict, that somehow, someday, we're going to be able to enjoy it. We're going to be able to control it.
Did you, at that time, so, you get arrested all the time and you're probably cursing your luck and, probably blaming all sorts of other people or circumstances and so on. Nonetheless, you must have had some sort of awareness about how far you'd sunk from having a place of your own, from being the nice black kid, from having a good job in an exciting industry that provides, lots of access to interesting people and athletes and so on, to being the guy who goes out to chase that really good score after which you will give up using. What was your awareness of this like at the time? How did you feel about it?
Again, that's part of the disease. You can do better, done better. I when I was in high school, I was in Who's Who of American high school students. There was a book that was published every year of some of the top high school students in America. I was in that book twice. I went to college. I got to travel. When I was 14, I got to travel to Hong Kong with my mom and my aunt. So I had a really privileged life for a middle America or a middle class kid. Again, of course, some kids have way more. I wanted a car at 16. I didn't get one until I was 18. So, but I knew, and that's part of, you're feeling so bad. One more hit will do it. I remember once I got arrested, and the cops were interrogating me, and the police officer said, "When was the last time you saw your mother?" And I broke down crying, because I knew how far I'd gone. And I remember at one point, I remember the delusions of grandeur. I said, I'm just going to become a criminal. I'm going to become a drug dealer. And, if I don't get to see my folks for a while, that's okay. Because, I was, that's just the insanity of it all. It was kind of like Scarface, Al Pacino in the movie Scarface. And, I thought I was going to be that guy. And I couldn't sell drugs because I like doing drugs too much. So you feel bad, and to make you feel bad, you do more drugs. You do more drugs, so you forget about feeling bad. When the drugs run off, you need more money, you go out and do more crime, and it's that vicious circle.
Mm-hmm. You were smoking every day, I take it.
Oh, yes, every day. Again, I would go out on runs. I mean, not a physical run, a long drug run.
I get it.
And I got out of jail I spent about a month in jail in April and May of 1989. Again, didn't have my own place anymore. I was living with my folks, and I wanted to get high every day. I wanted to get high, and I couldn't get high because I lived with my folks. So I told my folks one day I was going to the movies, and I didn't come home for 7 weeks. And in that 7 week period, I'd been arrested probably 3 or 4 times, but I was smoking every single day because we would, you know, shoplift or commercial burglar or do something. So we would do whatever we had to do to keep our high going.
How did you then eventually end up in the room? So the second part of that question, or question three, finally your rock bottom.
So I had been to my first meeting of Cocaine Anonymous in the fall of 1987. I knew Alan was sober in CA, and my sister had actually gotten sober in CA also, so I knew about it. And I, stole my dad's credit card one day, and over the next week maxed it out, and got to the point where I couldn't get any more money from his card, and I knew I had to go home, and I said I would go to CA, and I just kind of said that, so I wouldn't. I mean, I was an adult. I wasn't gonna get hit or anything like that, but it's just like, oh, they'll forgive me if I go to CA. So yeah, I'll pretend like I want to get help. So I went to CA, and it was great, but it wasn't for me yet because I still don't think I had that big of a problem. I still had, if I can figure this out, you know. So I lasted about 2 weeks, and then in the summer of 1989, I said that I went away for 7 weeks, getting high every day, and then came back. I was home for a week or two, and then went out again, and I was gone for about a month. And when I got home, a friend called me, and he said, "Yeah, eating," and I didn't know this is somebody I, smoked weed and drank with, but I didn't know he had gotten to the point where he needed to go to recovery program. So he took me to CA in September of 1989, and I started going to meetings regularly, but I was still using regularly. I went to rehab the following spring, and was moved into sober living, was, going to meetings and doing it all, but wasn't being honest with people. So I was telling people I was gonna do it, and I really didn't. And January of 1989, I'm sorry, January of 1991, I was honestly sober for about 8 months. I was living in sober living, and I went to get high one more time. Again, I still didn't believe that I was powerless. I thought, oh, I could just get high for tonight, like I could in 1986. And it was, oh, you do it a little bit now, put some away, you do it later. High for one night, and that one night turned into a month, and then I got arrested, and that's when I had the spiritual awakening. I said, okay, I'm done. You know, so it was in early February of 1991 is when I surrendered and was given the gift of desperation. When I decided that I'd rather be sober and live life on life's terms than to try to get high one more time, try to figure out how to do things my way.
And were you doing time during that period? You said you were in jail?
Like I said, I did, yeah, 2 months, about 2 months in jail. I didn't go to prison. Here in the States, you get arrested, and then you'll spend no more than 3 nights at the local police station, at the substation, and then you can go to jail. And jail is where you go typically while your trial, before you go to trial, or whatever. And then once you're sentenced, depending on the crime, you'll go to prison.
Sure,
So
understood.
I was in Riverside, California. So I got arrested. I was actually arrested in Moreno Valley, a city. So I spent just a few hours there. They transferred me to Riverside County Jail. I did trial. I would have been sentenced to 9 months. And if I'd gotten the 9 month sentence, I would have gone to one of the state prisons. But a friend of mine who I knew from recovery was an attorney, and he came and represented me. And instead of the 9 months, I got a 90-day sentence, and I'd already done, 60 of it. And you only have to do 2/3 of it. So from the time I was sentenced to 90 days, I got out like 4 or 5 days later.
Wow. God showing up for you there big time.
Yeah. Yeah. I was potentially looking at 9 months. And again, once you're in prison, things can change a lot, because prison is a lot harder than jail.
Yeah, of course, of course. Question 4. At your worst, did you ever want to die? Did you consider suicide?
I did. I never made a plan. I remember one day I was driving. There was a hill or a certain intersection in Los Angeles. And, I just thought, if I just don't turn my wheel, I'll just go over the cliff. I never thought about, hanging myself or taking pills or shooting myself. But it's just a thought that, maybe that's the only way to stop. I'm so down. Maybe that's the only way to stop. Kind of like Bill Wilson, the book talks about, he had to move his mattress to the first floor so he wouldn't want to jump out.
Yeah, sash and all. That place of when you start feeling like the world would be better off without you, or if you fail that there's no other way to stop really, or that it all doesn't really matter anymore. That's really the way it felt for me. This like, oh, you know what? Even if I'm no longer around, that's okay. I don't really care. I think it's a precursor, obviously, to more serious planning and things, but it's also such a huge warning sign. And if you, dear listener, if you're there right now, then please reach out, speak up, speak out to someone, say
Absolutely.
something. It doesn't have to be this way. Question 5. What other methods did you try to get sober before finding the rooms?
I don't think I ever tried to get sober. I tried to, it was, I'm just going to stop smoking cocaine. I wasn't going to stop drinking. I wasn't going to stop smoking weed. At one point, I remember when I still had my own place, I broke my crack pipe, threw it away, and thought I was done with it. And somebody who I smoked with came by and says, "Oh, can you get high at your place?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm not smoking anymore." "Oh, well, just let us." And I reluctantly let them come in. And I said, "You guys just stay in the bedroom." And I found myself like, "What are you doing in there?" And I never really tried to stop. I tried to control it. Once I went to my first CA meeting, let's say in 87, and I got a job working at a health club, and I would just get high on payday. I would just smoke coke on payday. I would smoke weed every day. I would drink whenever, but on payday, I would buy a crack pipe, buy some crack, rent a motel room, and I'd smoke that night, and the next day I was done. So I was smoking twice a month. So that was the only time that I really tried to even control it. I never tried to stop until I finally did stop, until I got to rehab in 1990. Like I said, I would go to CA, but I wasn't going to quit drinking. I wasn't going to quit smoking weed because those weren't my problems, I thought.
Yeah. Okay, so you tried moderation.
Exactly. And again, even when I was going to meetings, like I said, in 1990, and I got 8 months sober, I was just stopping for now. I had a plan to use again. I was just stopping for now. It wasn't, I'm done. 34 years ago, it's like, I'm done. It's not like, I'm done until something happened.
Yeah. In those 8 months, did you do the steps?
I did. I went to meetings. I had commitments. I was in a sober living. So again, I just wasn't being honest. I didn't tell anybody I'm doing this for a year. I said, yeah, I'm doing this. I went to conventions and, the recovery program or the fellowship in Los Angeles was strong. I was in a men's sober living. So we had good guys in the house. We were going to meetings every day. Again, had commitments, had a sponsor, worked steps. And again, but if I didn't tell anybody what my plan was.
I find this really interesting because sometimes we go through this process of going through the steps, right? And it's a very powerful process if we do it right and if we guide it correctly. Then it's an extremely powerful process. But of course, if your intention is not to stay sober, and if your intention is not honest, and you have this, the book speaks of a lurking notion. idea that if I do this for a year and then I can go out and become the user I used to be 5 years ago, you're still going to end up falling flat on your face.
Exactly. Exactly. For other people, again, I didn't really want to be sober. I wanted to learn how to use
Yeah,
properly.
yeah, like a
And I
gentleman.
figured if I could stay sober for a year, then, again, I don't know, thinking back, I don't know if I thought maybe I'd do it once a year, and I was always a guy with just 1 year, or newcomer to 1 year, then he's going out, newcomer to 1 year. I don't know what I thought, but I just knew, okay, I'm going to do this for a year, and then I'm going to pick up and not tell anybody,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
30 days. So I thought my plan was get a year sober, go out for just one night, and then in 30 days, take a 30-day chip and say, oh, I did it again. But again, I didn't think past that 30 days. So I don't know if I was planning on getting another year and doing it all over again, or I was going to do it for a year and then stay sober permanently. I don't know. But I just know the plan was stay sober for a year. And I never got there. So I got to 8 months.
And I'm not sure whether insanity really has a plan, or sort of clear-cut linear plan
Yeah.
like that. So yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Sean. Our question 6 is, once you came into the rooms, did you struggle with the word God?
No, I never did. I grew up going to church. I prayed. I said my blessing before foods. I grew up growing up in church. I
Yeah.
always believed in God. It was a different God. I say it was a Santa Claus God. If you give me this, I'll do this. It wasn't the higher power. It was, we were raised Episcopalian, which is, a branch of Catholicism. We went to church. I served on the altar. The first time I had wine was the first time I had alcohol that I enjoyed was when I had communion. So I didn't have a problem with God, but I just didn't want. I didn't think that was. I didn't want to rely on God. God was just something there. Like you need to eat vegetables. I'd rather eat a burger, but you need to eat vegetables. You have to have a balanced diet. So God was just part of life. It wasn't something to go to with your problems. It was something to ask for favors. Like I said, I'll be real good, God, if you do this for me. You know,
Transactional God.
exactly, exactly, exactly.
Our question 7, dovetailing with our question 6, whether you struggle with the word God, our question 7 is, how do you experience your higher power today?
It's it's funny. I speak a bit, at different CA events or conventions, and there was a convention in Los Angeles or in Southern California a few months ago, and I was talking to a good friend of mine, Ken Cross, and he's sober, over 41 years, and he was one of the first 100 people who got sober in Cocaine Anonymous, and we're we talk frequently. And I said, "Oh yeah, I'm the Sunday morning speaker at this convention," and he said, "Oh, huh, remember when they used to call that the spiritual speaker?" Because it was different. That the banquet speaker is kind of be more entertaining, and the spiritual speaker Sunday morning is just kind of a different speaker because they're going to talk a lot more about God. So when they sent me the schedule of speakers, they still called it the spiritual speaker, and I said, "Ken, I'm still the spiritual speaker." So that was back in March, and I spoke in Philadelphia 2 weeks ago at another CA convention, and I was the Sunday morning speaker.
Right.
So again, I I guess I'm pretty spiritual, and I trust God, and I don't know when it changed. It's just I still pray every morning. I still trust God. Still pray at night. I believe that God is taking care of me. I don't ask for things specifically. I ask for guidance. Pray for people. If I knew you were going through a medical problem, I'd say, God, please help Silvio get through this. Give him the strength to fight it. And then after I prayed for everybody else, then I'd say, God, guide me. And I might say I want something specifically. God, I need to work because I need to pay my bills. So direct me to who to talk to, who to call. I'm an independent contractor. So what calls do I need to make to get work, or which job should I turn apply for. If there's a girl that I like, and I'm not going to say God give her to me, but I was like, if you want her for me, or if you want me to be with her, guide my actions. Have me call her or text her just enough to keep her interested, but not to chase her off. So I'm constantly talking to God or communicating with God or trusting God. And I don't know when it happened. It just, and again, it talks about in the big book, sometimes the alcoholic doesn't understand how he's changed. Other people see it before he does. So again, I've spoken twice this year as the spiritual speaker at CA conventions. So I guess I'm pretty spiritual.
So I love the idea of God being your wingman. That's quite cool. I've not heard that before. It's very cool. So our question 8, I'm assuming you've done the steps a few times by now, but let's roll with it nonetheless. Which parts of the steps were the most difficult for you? Is our question 8.
Probably I think it was the second time I did a 4-step. I did a 4-step in 1990 again, but I still used one more time. So in 91, at some point in 91 and 92, I did it, but I did it again in 2000 or 2001. I went through a workshop that takes you through all 12 steps in a month. And we did it as a group, and we were all going to get together, and everybody's going to work on the 4-step on a particular day. And the facilitator said, okay, plan 12 hours. We're going to do 12 hours. I said, I don't have a 12-hour 4-step. I didn't think I had that many or that many resentments. I said, I probably have 4 or 5. And he said, just set aside 12 hours for it. I said, but I don't, so I'm trying to get out of it. And I said, okay, fine, I'll set aside the 12 hours for it. And then ended up having about 15 or 16, So it wasn't, again, I thought there was 2 or 3 and I had 15 or 16. So it was difficult in seeing where I was wrong in these resentments. And the fear inventory, I've learned that usually when I get in trouble, it's when I'm responding to fear. Mm-hmm. And when I can do my best to stay out of fear, things work well. Again, it's the 12th of the month, or I don't have my rent. Well, the rent's not due until the 1st of next month, Well, in December, I'm worrying about what's going to happen in May. No, you handle today's day. So when I can learn how to live life a day at a time, and of course I make plans, there's the convention in London in March. I want to go, and it's something I want to do, but I can't plan on it right now, especially in the work I do. Depending on work, comes up. I don't have a regular job where I can put in for my vacation for March. So I trust that if God wants me there, and if it's my plan to be there, I'll be there. That second, fourth step was the most difficult.
That mode of living you're referring to there is something that I think many people, me included, find difficult. Every time I start feeling really fearful, it's because I'm trying to solve a problem that's a year away, or 3 months away, or something like that, or might not even be real at this point. And
right.
It's taken a long time to learn this, unlearn the old way and learn the new way of just trusting more, and of saying things like, well, if God wants me to be there, if my higher power thinks I should be at this convention, then, do you know what? It'll just happen to me.
Usually when I think those thoughts and then I let go of it, it works out my way. It's like, I'm trying to go, trying to do this on November 1st. I'm trying to do this on November 1st, and I want to do this on November 1st. You know what? If I don't do it on November 1st, it's okay. And then a day or 2 days later, something happens and I get to do it on November 1st. The job comes through, or the money comes through, or something happens. And as soon as I say, okay, it's out of my control.
Yeah, I think the grasping in particular makes it really difficult. The moment you really sort of hold on to things, The hands on the steering wheel approach is, and it's only, I suppose it's only human, isn't it? This is that you want to steer the
Yeah,
car into the direction you think it should be
yeah,
going, but it's just not the way it was.
right.
Yeah, I hear that. Absolutely. Question 9: which character defects give you most trouble today?
That's a tough one. Um, again, I know when I'm working and I have money in the bank, or I've got money coming in, I feel more at peace with the world. When I'm not working and I get into fear, um, you know, I'm, again, I'm going to be homeless. Nobody's ever going to want to date me. Nothing ever. I'm never going to have anything good anymore. So it would be, I guess, fear. When I'm operating out of fear.
Catastrophizing.
Yeah, I am judgmental, but I'm still accepting. People, I'll say, jokingly, yeah, we're going to, we won't judge you in CA. Well, yeah, we are going to judge you, but we're going to love you anyway.
Yeah.
If the person who struggles, is constantly counting days or taking a newcomer chip, we judge them. That person constantly struggles.
Yeah.
But we're going to help them. I'm not going to turn anybody away. And from time to time, again, I still have alcoholism. I still have the disease that tells me, depending on the day of the week, you're 40, you're 34 years sober. You're better than everybody in that room.
Mm-hmm.
Or, my gosh, you live in a tiny apartment in New York. You don't have enough money in the bank. You're no good. When I'm right in the middle, that's the best. That's why I like going to meetings. There was a meeting I used to go to when I lived in LA. It was a men's meeting. And at the time I was, 15, 16, 17 years sober. And I was right in the middle of sobriety. There was a lot of guys in the room with 25, 30 years, and a lot of guys with 30, 90 days. So it made me feel like I was right in the middle. Because if I walk into a meeting, and especially like when I go to London, I joke, I'm more sober than CA in London.
Yeah.
Because I'm almost 34 and CA in London is almost 33. So if I'm in a CA meeting in London, I'm the king of sobriety, and I celebrate. I think it was the year I turned 32 years. So either 31 or 32, I celebrated in London and came home to a meeting in Manhattan. And again, there's only 4 meetings in Manhattan. And I went to my Sunday home group and there was 2 people with more time than me. So I walked in thinking, I'm going to be the butt. So I like being in the middle.
Yeah.
I like, there's times of the day when I get judgmental. I think I'm more handsome or more athletic or more sober. And there's times when I feel really less than. I'm fat. I'm just like everybody.
Of course.
Or like most people. But I don't focus too much on those. I do my best to stay in the middle and realize I'm no better. I'm no less. I'm an alcoholic addict doing his best, to not to have to make an amends to somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Thank you, Sean. Question 10. What is the best thing recovery has given you?
Relationships. Relationships that are unique and priceless. I have so many friends in recovery, in the rooms, in the fellowships, and I have people who have never seen me drink or use, but because I'm authentic and because I do what I say I'm going to do, and because I do my best the attitude, I have, friends. I went through cancer treatment earlier this year, and I had friends who said, you need help. Again, a girl who I've known since nursery school said, you need help. You need help. You need to ask for help. People need to help you. And I don't have a car, so I had to. So the treatment was it's 5 days a week. I had to take Uber there. And it was $250 a week just to get back and forth to treatment. And I would have done it on my own, but someone said, you need to help. You need to ask for help. So I said, all right, fine. So I said that I could use Uber gift cards. Somebody said that I, get the help. So I asked for it. And I said, this will help me get to treatment and help feed me, because you can use a gift card for Uber Eats. And I got enough donations to get me to treatment every day. And about a third of the people were people who are not in the fellowship, people that I've met, going to football games or being on Facebook groups, or just people I see again. So they're not my friends in the fellowship, but they're friends that I have because I'm in the fellowship,
Of course.
because of the man that Cocaine Anonymous has made, the man that Cocaine Anonymous has turned me into. I'm allowed to have relationships with family, friends of family, coworkers. So I think that's the greatest thing that recovery has given me.
Yeah, that's really, really beautiful relationships. I'll take that away with me tonight now to meditate on. Great. Question 11. What would you say to a newcomer or someone wondering if they're an addict?
Said, if you're wondering you're an addict, you probably are. Normal people don't typically wonder if they're addicts or not. If you find yourself in a meeting of CA on your own, or in a meeting of AA, you probably have a problem. And that's okay. And again, we tell you in the book, if you don't think you are fine, go out and try some controlled drinking or using. If you can do it on your own, if you can stop at 11 p.m. or you can only spend $100 or whatever goal you set up, if you can stick by that, great. You're not one of us, and if you ever change your mind, if you want to be here, we're here for you.
Yeah.
And the big book says we feel our way of living has its advantages for all. If you're not sure, try us out. Try us for 90 days. Do everything. Go to the meetings, get a commitment, have a sponsor, work the steps, and if in 90 days you're not better off, then go back.
I'm of the also of the firm belief that I think pretty much anybody would probably benefit from doing the 12 steps. Right? It's just my opinion, of course.
Yeah, there are dozens of 12-step programs, and the substance is only mentioned in the first half of the first step. Whether it's gambling, sex, food, spending, people, codependence, or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's that first half of the first step. We're powerless over cocaine, marijuana, alcohol, gambling, sex, food. The other 11 steps are about getting a connection with God.
Indeed so. And speaking of God, question 12. What do you want your higher power to say to you, quote unquote, at the pearly gates?
Did a good job. You did a good job. Or you were a good person. Something along those lines. I'm not religious. Like I said, I grew up in the church. I was religious, but since I got sober, I'm spiritual. And it's funny. I'm speaking on a Zoom meeting this coming Tuesday, and they said they wanted a page in the big book or a reading, and the reading I chose is God doesn't make too hard of terms for those who seek Him. There's dozens of religions out there, if not hundreds. And I believe it's the ones who require it the least, or, our 11th step is, sought through prayer. I'm sorry, our public relations policies is based on attraction rather than promotion. I'd rather have something, rather than say you need to go to CA or you need to believe in God the way I believe in God or whatever, have somebody say, hey, you're really even tempered, or what do you attribute that to? And I say, I'm spiritual, So if I'm getting ready to, God says, yep, you were a good job. You did a good job. You helped more than you hurt. When you did hurt, you made amends for it. You did your best to be considerate and tolerant of other people. Because I'm not perfect. I do have to make amends from time to time. Even to this day, or things. I've got a friend, and we're different political views, and he would text me and want to talk, and I was like, I don't want to talk politics via text. You can call me and we can talk about it, but I don't want to do it via text. And one day he posted something on Instagram, and I didn't agree with it, and I commented, and then he posted back, and I got upset, and I need to quit being friends with him. And I was like, wait a minute. If I told him, don't text me about politics, I can't text him about politics. I've got to stay out of it. So, I realized I was in the wrong in trying to justify myself. So I hope God says I did a good job.
You've certainly done a really good job here today with us. Thank you so much for being my guest on 12 Steps and 12 Questions, Sean. It's been a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
You were very generous and very honest with your life story and about what you've gone through and how you've recovered, from a hopeless state of mind and body. I have to say, I'm sure the millennials will have to look up a couple of things. You mentioned the Who's Who. That's out of the window now, I guess. And Scarface, great movie that it was. But, it is, I think, from, if memory serves, from 1983 or something like that.
So 84, maybe 83, 84, something like that. Scarface is one of those movies, though, that sticks up. It's still,
I suppose.
There's like so many memes from Scarface, sitting with the cocaine on his face, or, there's a meme with his jelly donuts, or, say hello to my little friend.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. So I suppose you're quite right about the Scarface. The Who's Who, though, I think that you have to be of a certain age to remember that one, that's for sure. Thank you again, Sean. All the best for you and your medical treatment if you're still having it. And thank you for being my guest on 12 Steps and 12 Questions today. We've come to the end of this episode. Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed it and would like other addicts and alcoholics to hear it, then please make the pesky AIs and algorithms work their 12th step. Hit like and subscribe. While this pod is based on the 12-Step Recovery Program, it's not officially affiliated with any 12-Step fellowship. 12 Steps and 12 Questions is not substance or behavior specific, it's fully self-supporting and not-for-profit. And this next bit. It's not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, and it neither endorses nor opposes any causes.